So I'm lucky enough to have the dubious honor of having the scariest title in the lineup today. Life After the Robot Apocalypse, which not a great future. But I think first we need to actually work out what do I mean by a robot. So when I say robot, you're probably going to get a picture a little bit like this guy. And although Wally is cute and cuddly and exactly what we want in our robotic future, I'm actually going to broaden the definition a wee bit for today. And I'm going to go with a robot is anything that does autonomous work. And it turns out that's an equally good definition when I'm talking about artificial intelligence, or AI, as it's commonly known. Now that has some slightly different connotations. If I say AI, you might think about some voice whispering in your ear the entire time, like Samantha from Her, or maybe something a bit more physical, like Sunny from iRobot. If you've been watching the news recently, you might even picture the Terminator, depending how positive your outlook's going to be on the future. But that's not what AI is at all. It turns out underneath, AI is just a bunch of maths. This is a bit of my research this year, and I'm not going to go into the details of that. But because it's just maths, it turns out there's no voodoo that we do that you can't do too. Unless your calculus is a wee bit rusty, in which case there's a wee bit of voodoo that we do that you can't do too. So what does maths actually buy us? Turns out quite a lot. A few years ago, Google were dreaming of their self-driving car. And now it's in fact a reality and has driven miles and miles of the US road system. And soon there are going to be driverless taxis in New York. This is becoming a reality as we speak. We're also seeing the likes of Google Now, or Cortana, or Alexa, or perhaps most famous of all, we have Siri. These are the intelligent assistants living in our smartphones today. It turns out, though, our smartphones are actually a lot smarter than just some AI living in there. And in fact, AI has crept in very subtle ways. The most prominent probably being autocorrect. We don't consider this as artificial intelligence, but in fact, it's grown to be so much more than just correcting what we type as we type it. It's now able to predict what you want to say and offer these suggestions. It's helping you say what you want to say before you know you're going to say it. That's pretty cool. So we love AI in general, or maybe not. You've probably heard robots are going to take all our jobs, and that applies just as well to AI. They're great at crunching numbers, far better than a person is ever going to be. And they can manage massive data sets, so much more than a person will ever be able to hold in their head at one time. Even industries we thought were perhaps fairly safe, such as human service. We now see, if you've been to Macca's recently, you talk to a machine rather than talking to a person. And personally, I like that better. Some people don't. We're also seeing them invade our agriculture areas. We've got drones that can spray the fields for us. And we're even now seeing grapevine pruning robots. This is actually work by the University of Canterbury, by Professor Richard Green. It's really cool work. His next project sounds a little more spooky, something about forestry and chainsaws and drones, and not going to go into that one today. But in general, we're actually moving more towards a health side of you. Now, we don't like to think about this, but our doctors make mistakes. And they make mistakes because they don't have all the information, and that's where computers really shine. They can take in all this information that one person could never manage. So there's one or two companies appearing in California that are quite good at managing health data. So everyone's going unemployed, essentially, is what I'm saying here. The low skilled, the high skilled, everyone's in trouble. So I'm going to put up a couple of quotes that sort of reflect the current mood of the world. Twitter and Facebook could harm moral values. Thank you, Telegraph. That's really making me feel good about myself. Apparently, I'm soulless and awful. Thank you, Internet. Same thing's happening with our intelligence. Google is making us stupid. I use Google to make this, ergo, apparently I'm stupid. Let's hope that's not true, Atlantic. What about this one? It'll exhaust the children's brains and nervous systems. I think we've all heard that warning about tablets. Haven't heard it quite so much on school, but there we go. That's what the sanitarian said back in 1883. And we've heard other similar warnings, confusing and harmful. That one's been going around a lot lately. Even back in 1565 on the newspaper. That scary new stuff that's coming out. I hear it's going to change the world. And of course, you've got the joke by now. They will not use their memories, probably not on the latest new internet app. That one was actually on books. So why do we always reach this conclusion? Every time we make something new, we're going to panic about it. Now, these days, we have this lovely, cuddly word called disruption. And it's when some new technology takes over from the old one. We used to have a slightly less friendly word, which was apocalypse. Now, when I say apocalypse, the pictures aren't so good, generally something involving the four horsemen, and we're all pretty upset about that. But it actually has a very different original meaning from the Greek. It's just the world changing from new knowledge. And that's precisely what's happening right at this moment. And in fact, it's happened before as well. It's important to think what these guys thought. They're called Luddites. We have them today, but we don't mean it in quite the same way. They started smashing the printing presses and the weaving machines way back in the early 19th century. They believed machines were taking their jobs, ruining the future, and everything was going to go down in a ball of flame. That didn't quite happen, and in fact what did happen was we all got healthier. Life expectancy has gone up since the Industrial Revolution began, so I'd say the world didn't quite end. Of course, just because we're living longer doesn't mean we're living better lives. It just so happened that happened as well. We've also got a lot wealthier in the intervening time. Everyone's living longer, they're living better lives. This apocalypse where we changed the world actually went pretty good. So this is where New Zealand comes in. And robots add value when working with humans, not replacing them. I love that quote. And the reason we didn't really think of it like that back when the Industrial Revolution was happening was because the amount of people having to adapt to change at one time was pretty terrifying. We had whole nations, whole continents going through this. We're going through it on a global scale now, but because New Zealand is a small country, normally a bad thing, it means we can actually pivot really, really quickly. So although we're seeing the likes of McDonald's starting to introduce this stuff, it's actually helping the workers. If we look up here, this is actually McDonald's employee. She's able to manage more customers better thanks to the technology assisting her in her job. It hasn't taken her job, it has assisted her job. And if we look closer to home again, we're going to see this agriculture example come back. What's happened is now we've got the farmer over there. He's able to use the drone to actually manage a larger portion of land to help him be better off in his work. And it's keeping him out of the way of potentially dangerous chemicals, all the health hazards that go with that. He's now removed from that awful scenario. Same thing with the grapevine picking robot or various chainsaws associated with the other robots that might come along. And in general, we're actually seeing a trend of what's happening is that the work we're replacing with robots is actually the work we didn't really want to do, or the work that was hard. This is SQL Tutor. This is another project by the University of Canterbury, and if you read the media releases the wrong way, it's going to replace all the teachers because you're going to have this artificial intelligence that can teach students. Now, that's actually not what this was designed to do. It's designed to help the teachers. The teacher still presents the material to the students, and then SQL Tutor learns how a student learns, and is able to present the work in a way that is most applicable to them. So instead of a teacher saying, go to this page reference or do this worksheet, the student gets work that is tailored to how they learn best, what they will learn best. And just in case you think I'm happy about this future because my job is safe, this is Weka from the University of Waikato. It's taking on my job, or in fact, it's taking away the parts of my job I don't like. What it's done is it's taken out the sometimes messy and unfortunate parts about machine learning, all this future I've been talking about, and it's taken them away and dealt with them for me. Now, when I manage data sets, I can look at the big picture using this tool. It takes away all the mucky stuff that I didn't want to deal with and makes it so I can enjoy my work. It'll infect all our work that way. So, in general, yes, robots are taking our jobs, but they're taking the jobs we didn't like. They will do them better, and that's a good thing. They don't get tired. They won't get drunk. They won't get angry or sleepy or anything like that. What they will do is they will do the jobs we didn't want to do, and they will do them better. And really, that's what I'm here to say. Everything will be okay. What happens is when they've taken the jobs we don't like, the workforce will shift again. Just like happened with the Industrial Revolution, we've taken the children out of the coal mines, and we're actually doing better for it. No one's going to argue that was a terrible idea. So really, all we can do at this point is keep calm and carry on.
What's the bit of your job you enjoyed that the robot won't take away?
So at the moment, in general, artificial intelligence is very bad at the more creative end of the spectrum. So although it's exceptionally good at doing something like playing chess or searching an infinite number of moves, it can't generally make a good decision without some information from someone else. And the part about my job that I enjoy is actually looking at these data sets as a whole and seeing all the patterns that are not immediately apparent. And that's something that's not yet easily able to be done through artificial intelligence.
It's only a question of time, though, isn't it?
Some would argue yes, and it is a possibility. What's going to happen is more likely that we won't get robots taking every job. They will just slowly progress more and more, taking the jobs we don't like, and we will just continue to move into the other jobs that we do.
When you suggested that a teacher can do stuff that a robot can't do because it could tailor learning for students.
That is what the robot does. The robot tailors the
learning. So what
learning.
does the teacher do that the robot can't do?
So the teacher is still a much better way of communicating information the first time around. A robot is actually very poor at that. There have been studies that show if you just throw a student at this SQL tutor the first time, they're not going to do so great. But if you've presented them with the material beforehand in a lecture-style environment or something, they can have this exposure to the information, which is then reinforced in a way that is more tailored to them using these systems.
Your predecessor, Roland, wasn't a fan of driverless cars, very dangerous, he said. You seem to quite like the concept.
I do. As I said, they're not going to get drunk or tired or hungry or anything like that. So I'm a fan.